1, 2, 3.
While our weekly shows are edited to time for broadcast on public TV and community radio, we offer to our members and podcast subscribers the full Uncut conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters.
If you care about the future, resisting autocracy or building democracy, we have a very special show for you today. As many of you know, much as Donald Trump rails against Europe, there is one small country there that he adores: Hungary. He and its strongman leader, Viktor Orbán, have praised each other for years. Anti-democratic, demagogic, pro-Putin, pro-Netanyahu, anti-immigrant, anti-woman, anti-queer, Orbán and Trump came to power on parallel tracks with similar values. And if there is a model for the Trump administration, Orbán's is the one most explicitly being followed by them today. With our leaders in such a love fest, it stands to reason then that our two countries' resistance movements have much to share. So, as we head into a critical winter for all of us, we have convened two experienced resistors. From the United States, we have Ezra Levin. He is the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, the grassroots movement behind such historic protests as the Hands Off and No Kings rallies that saw millions of people hit the streets earlier this year. Indivisible is also actively involved in voter turnout efforts, including this fall's sweep of anti-Trump election victories. From Hungary, we are lucky to welcome László Upor, former vice rector and acting rector of the University of Theatre and Film Arts in Budapest, Hungary. When the Orbán administration began taking control of Hungary's universities, only one fought back: his. And they did it in a world of inspiring ways, as you'll hear. They've been busy ever since, building an international alternative. Clearly, both of our guests have stories to tell and perhaps questions to ask of each other. What is working, what is not, and where does the resistance to autocracy stand? Welcome, both of you. It is a pleasure to have you with me here on Laura Flanders and Friends. I'm eager to get started, but I know that I've brought you each from many things to this conversation. So as we begin, just to kind of settle ourselves here, I'll ask you, what's uppermost in your mind or on your heart as we start to speak? Ezra, let's start with you. Who are you thinking about?
Well, look, we're a practical movement, so uppermost in my mind is the election that is literally right now. We're looking at an election in Tennessee in a district that really no Democrat should have any business competing in, but this incredible organizer, this incredible legislator, Afton Bain, is running in a Trump plus 22 district, and the election is today. And the Republicans are scared. There's such a wave against this regime right now that they're pulling out all the stops to save a Republican plus 22 district. So, gosh, that's where my heart and my mind is right now.
All right, so Ezra's eyes are on Tennessee. What about you, László?
Well, I'm sitting in a New York apartment in Brooklyn now, working on the English translation of my book. I wrote about the resistance movement. I don't know if I should be proud of being Hungarian or ashamed of being one, depending on whose playbook we are playing from. Is it Orbán's playbook followed by Trump, or the playbook of the resistance, of examples? But I'm certainly very proud of being here with the two of you together. As I learned, one of the most influential people in the United States, Ezra, was voted for. So it's a great privilege to be here. As for back in Hungary, we are working on the future of a free society. We will probably discuss later.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you all for that. Let's begin with giving our audience a bit of a sense of your backstory, or maybe your kind of beginning story. And Ezra, again, I'll come to you. People may not realize, who've gotten involved with Indivisible during Trump's second term, that you actually began in his first term when you and your wife, Leah Greenberg, were responding to his first election, so 2016. If you can cast your mind back to that moment and what you thought you were doing then, that might help us get a sense of how things have progressed.
Yeah, look, we didn't think we were starting some sort of big national effort like this. We were former congressional staffers. We had both worked on Capitol Hill for members of Congress during the rise of the Tea Party. So we had seen a right-wing grassroots movement push back against a popular trifecta Democratic government. Obama had just won with big margins. He had the House, he had the Senate. He was pushing forward a bold policy agenda. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this Tea Party force started rising up all over the country. My boss was targeted by it. Leah's boss in Congress was targeted by it. And they were organizing locally and pushing their elected officials. I disagreed with their racism. I disagreed with their violence. I disagreed with their ideology. But damn it, they knew how to organize locally and use the tools available to constituents to push back. Flash forward to 2016, Trump wins. And it wasn't just his win that led us to try to start Indivisible. It was two things. One, a future Trump appointee talking about the Japanese internment camps during World War II as a model for what to do with immigrants and refugees and Muslims. That was terrifying. That was horrifying. But then, second, was an interview with incoming minority leader on the Democratic side of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, in which he said, well, we lost the election. That's what happens sometimes. We're just going to have to figure out ways to work with Trump. That was shocking to me. That was shocking to Leah. That was shocking to a lot of folks who viewed Trump as an existential threat to our democracy and somebody who needed to be resisted, not worked with, not somebody to figure out where the common ground is, but to stop his agenda before it can get off the tracks. And so we wrote a guide basically drawing on our experiences working against the Tea Party. We saw what they did so effectively and said, look, you don't have to like what they were fighting for, but you can appreciate the power of local organizing in a democratic republic. We can do this. And so we put out a Google Doc called Indivisible, a guide to resisting the Trump agenda, and thought maybe this will be helpful to somebody out there who is looking for how to build and wield power in this moment. And shockingly, people read it, and then even more shockingly, they started forming indivisible groups all over the country.
Beautiful.
That's how it all started.
That is a great backstory. And László, I'm going to come to you for a backstory. I mean, you too found yourself in a moment, and I'm going to ask you to describe a particular moment where you looked around at what your skills were and what you could do, faced with a serious sort of existential threat to the institution that you were a part of. I'm thinking of August, the end of August 31st, 2020. Not the beginning of your story by any means, but a night that was so important.
No, of course not. But let me first say that I really admire Indivisible, and the name itself, it has a lot, because Indivisible is very, very visible, and that's one of the major points. Is I think that's part of our success, both Indivisible and our story. I was a happy literary translator and dramaturg who became leader of the University of Theatre and Film with not wanting it, but this is what I became. And that was the point when the government decided to take over all the Hungarian universities, of which only our university said, hey, that's not right. We wouldn't take that. So after several months of the staff and faculty resisting the government, eventually the students started organizing. And from that point on, we were marching together, students and faculty, and with a growing national and international support as a background, we first we created a thing we called the Learning Republic, but that was preceded by the whole leadership resigning and the students occupying the main building of the university that they kept under blockade for 71 long days. And those days were filled with creative actions, very theatrical, very spectacular actions. And I could go on about that for 3 weeks without even stopping, and I wouldn't.
Well, describe one. I mean, there is an incredible scene that I've seen of people, your colleagues and collaborators, passing a charter from hand to hand to the parliament. Describe, László, what that was. What were you doing?
What happened was the government, when they decided to take over the universities, they rewrote all the basic documents, the bylaws, the funding documents, etc. So we decided to write something they cannot rewrite, and we call that Charter Universitatum. And we sent that document from the blockaded building. That was day 5 of the blockade. We sent that document from the entrance of the university to the parliament. And the document, the actual physical document, traveled via 15,000 hands of supporters. So it was like a 5-mile long snake, human snake, through the whole city, and every one of them touched that document, basically hand signed the document, became accomplices in our crime against the illiberal state.
Well, it's a beautiful example of one of many, many actions, and it indicates, it drives home the creativity in what you did in Hungary and what you continue to believe in as a principle. You too. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, if I can add one more thing, it immediately involved and included people. So people were not just audiences to our actions, but they actually were invited to join.
Well, that's what I wanted to pull out. So you're both communicators, you're both in the business of communicating, and very successful you are at it too. And one of my questions is, have you defined what the principles are guiding your efforts at communication or your communication tactics? Ezra?
That is a big wow. I've not been asked that question before. What are the principles of our communication?
What are the principles? I mean, I'm hearing László just mentioned involvement. We want to involve people, not just tell people what to do.
Well, I think one of the things that that's been foundational to the work we've done from the very beginning, I think it was helped because we didn't expect to start anything. We didn't think we were starting an organization. We didn't think we were starting a movement. We thought we were providing some useful information to folks. The number one response that we got when we put that guide out, which was all about how dangerous Trump was, how bad this regime was going to be, how much we needed to organize and fight back, was folks saying that they had hope after reading it. And we didn't write the guide to give people hope. We wrote the guide to tell people they had power. So this idea that people have power, but they've got to exercise it, is foundational to just about everything we put out in the world. You will see me or Leah or other national Indivisible staff talking to reporters or talking on big calls, but we're not the leaders of the movement. The leaders of the movement are the folks who are actually organizing on the ground. And it's really, really important to us that people aren't consuming Indivisible content for the purposes of being entertained or even being informed. They should be consuming content for the purpose of then using it in some way in their actual lives. So this thing that László is pushing on of participatory democracy is so, so important, because what they want, what the regime wants, is to isolate us, make us feel alone, and put us in a position of scrolling through social media in this passive way, just accepting what the regime does. And so our enemy in this is not Trump, it's not the Republicans, it's not the broader regime. Our enemy is this sense of cynicism or fatalism or nihilism, this sense that nothing we do matters, so why even try? So, Laura, you're asking me this now. I hadn't really thought about it in this way, but I do think a core principle in our communication philosophy is convincing people you have power. You just got to use it. The best way to use it is in concert with a lot of other people in your own community.
Oh, and László, I mean, this is singing your song, isn't it? Or reading from your script.
No, but no, that's you gave me loads of clues, because I think the key to our movement was we were indivisible, the unity and the solidarity, unbreakable solidarity between staff and the students, faculty and the students. And the other one is that it was a very multi-phased movement. So it was not like a movement with a leader that you can hand down. It was loads of faces that became familiar faces for the whole country, because the whole fight was going on for several months, but people learned them. They got to know those people, and that was very important. We shared responsibility in everything. And the other thing is to share some kind of an example that you don't have to be afraid. There's nothing to be scared of. And we definitely, none of us, neither the students nor the faculty, behaved as victims. We didn't believe we were victims. So I think they were the key things, that the multi-faces, the unity, the indivisibility, and the fearlessness of the whole movement. And of course, the spectacular, it was entertaining too. However tragic, still entertaining.
Talk more about that, because I think entertaining has become an element of protest in the US more recently. I'm thinking about the No Kings protests of this year that have seen people come out in green frog suits and all sorts of suits to try to kind of ridicule the authoritarian tone and the policing that's happening in very frightening ways. That ridicule is important. And you did that too, László, right?
Absolutely. You have to laugh at them, not be afraid of them, and they will duck at some point. They cannot face mirth. They don't understand mirth. They don't understand the reason. They think they are invincible, and when they just don't give in, they don't understand what's going on.
So give us an example of another action while we think about involvement. Ezra, your No Kings slogan, people picked that up in so many ways and made it their own. And you see the signs for, months after the demonstration in people's windows. László, I know that when the students took over the university, you kind of barricaded yourselves in with caution tape, which in Hungary is red and white, not yellow. And that tape ended up everywhere as a kind of visual connecting device. Was that was that carefully thought out in advance, or it just happened?
No. Nothing was. Nothing was. It happened almost accidentally. The students first wanted to blockade the building with planks, like as a fortress. And the chancellor, who was very, very much in favor of the resistance, he was a good guy. He said, "This is not safe. You cannot escape if there's anything wrong going on. Do something that you can go through." And they said, "Oh, okay, let's get some red and white tapes," and it became very spectacular. So people started coming to the building and say, "Oh, okay, this is a piece of art." Of course, our students were all artists, like visual artists, theater people, film people, media people. So they used their own talents, and that tape became one of the major symbols. So when the human chain happened, what we described earlier, and it was COVID time. So we distributed pieces of this red and white tape so they could keep the social distance. But that means that we distributed thousands and thousands of pieces of that thing. And we told people, don't throw them away because that's garbage, that's pollution. Take them home. So they took them home, and thousands of people suddenly had that little tape. So it became a fashion. And the same happened with the mask. The students had yellow masks, all of them, and yellow masks with the other symbol, the raised hands painted on it. And tens of thousands, I mean, literally tens of thousands of people all around Hungary were ordering it by mail. They wanted to have that. So you were traveling the country, and you met at a petrol station 300 miles from Budapest. You met another guy with the same mask and waving to each other. Are you too? Me too. Yes.
Ezra, coming to you. I mean, the US is not Hungary, and theater occupies a different, I have to say, lesser place in our kind of pantheon of powerful institutions in this country. But we have our own. And I'm wondering, as you listen to László, what are the parallels, or where do you see similarities, differences? And do you think that you've learned things about what inspires people and involves people and what doesn't? I'm assuming Indivisible's had some dud ideas along the way.
We've had plenty of dud ideas. There's a lot that resonated with what László's done, and we've taken inspiration from what y'all have done in Hungary. I just want to say that out loud. I think we are not by training, resistance experts. I was an anti-poverty advocate, and Leah worked on anti-human trafficking work. We worked in Congress as an advocates. When we started organizing, we were looking around for ideas about how do you fight back against not just a right-wing administration, but an authoritarian regime. a regime that is systematically attacking other sources of power. And one of these lessons that came out is ridicule is such an important weapon. So just a plus one what László is saying here. I loved what you said. They don't understand mirth. Ah, that is so true. They want to be feared. They want to be accused of being an authoritarian, of being a strongman. That they like that. What they can't afford is to be ridiculed, to be made fun of. They don't understand it. They can't engage with it. And also, it means that your people-powered protest is fun and popular, and people want to be part of it. Our solution to this problem is getting historic numbers of people involved, pushing back against the regime. You can't do that if this is some kind of serious, sad, scary, violent conflict with the regime. They will win. The regime has a monopoly on violent force in this country. They will win that. We do not want to engage in violence. We do not want this to be a sad thing that you have to do because it's always serious. We want this to be joyous resistance. We want this to be something that you're going to feel like you're missing out if you don't come to this protest, because it's going to be a fun time. So you talked about, Alora, the unicorns or the frogs. You go to a No Kings protest, you see dancing, you see laughing, you see people bringing their dogs and their kids and their grandmas. You see hilarious signs ridiculing the regime. That is core to what we're doing. And it's really difficult for an authoritarian regime to combat that, because how do you push back against people having a good time, exercising their basic rights to show up in public with each other? They want to describe us as some kind of, I don't know, violent or subversive movement, but we show with our actual actions what we're doing, and they don't know how to push back against that.
Plus, it is really hard to arrest people in those green suits. Just saying. As we say on this show, this is the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. From our recent conversations with Dolores Huerta on courage, or with the federal workers blowing the whistle at HUD, or with the congresswoman and the Marine veterans standing together against the militarization of our cities, we seek out stories that can inform and even inspire. We're proud to stand strong, but we can't do it alone. Independent journalism like ours only survives because people like you believe it matters. If you value bold reporting on grounded solutions for a fairer future for all, please consider making a donation today at lauraflanders.org. And thank you for standing with us at Laura Flanders and Friends, and for helping to keep independent journalism like ours alive and kicking. While we're talking, you have now filled me with joy and happiness, but it has to be said that we are still living in authoritarian times. And László, coming to Hungary, it's not as if you, quote unquote, won. The government did not change. It did not give you back your university. It did take over that institution. It did take over a lot of the theaters and the arts and media, and is in power. So how do you assess, as it were, quote unquote, what works, or success, or victory?
Well, it would be easy and funny to say that we lost everything, but we still didn't lose, or we didn't win anything, but we won. But this is what I really think, that they couldn't break us, which is very important. And we gave an example that it is possible. Resistance is possible. And also we found a way out, because eventually, when it was impossible to get the university back, but it was clear that the autonomy of the university is done, not only for us, but the whole higher education sector in Hungary, we decided to leave the system, and we set up an independent, free society. And we are penniless, but we can go on working, educating, creating, etc., etc.
So explain that further. What do you mean by your own independent, liberated society?
About eventually, after many months of fights, and when the blockade was done and all that stuff was over, about half of the students and half of the faculty left the university for good, and we formed a society we call Free SFA Society, where SFA is acronym for the University of Theatre and Film. And we joined forces with 5 European art universities, and they agreed on creating an umbrella to adopt our students, the students who left the old university. So those students could finish their studies seamlessly under the leadership of their old teachers, because the trick was, which is not trick, it's all legal, that we went on teaching them in Budapest, commissioned by one of those universities to teach their students who were actually our students. And this we called the emergency exit program. So all the university students who left the old institution could finish at one or the other European institution and get their diplomas, which is an exceptional thing. It's very, very easy to be proud of, I think. And in this society that we formed to basically to administer this emergency exit, we go on teaching in a different setup, because now we cannot give them certificates. They have to, unfortunately, they have to pay tuition fee, which wasn't the case with the previous university. But still, we teach, we invite people, and people come and study with us. And very recently, this society was provided an abandoned school building by the city, which is in opposition with the government. So I'm not saying it's a happy ending, but it's a way out, and it's an alternative way out. And so I think all in all, although it's difficult, it may be called a success story.
Any thoughts, Ezra, on that idea of creating a kind of a parallel institution of a kind, perhaps for one that's been shut down?
Look, we have two options. We can give in to the fascists, or we can fight back. I mean, that's it. That's it. So I am in favor of never giving up. I'm in favor of never giving up. There's not going to be some decisive moment in the US or in some other country where we say, okay, democracy is lost and we're never giving it back. There's also not going to be some decisive moment where we've won democracy and we can all just go home. It is a participatory sport. We either get engaged and show up and organize however we can using the tools available to us, or we let the fascists win. Those are the choices. And so if you understand the challenge in front of us in that way, yes, I'm fully in favor of what László is doing and figuring out, okay, given the constraints that you're currently facing, given the obstacles in front of you right now, what can you do right now? What can your group of pro-democracy advocates and organizers do in this moment? And there are going to be different opportunities to folks available to folks in Hungary versus folks elsewhere in Europe versus folks in the United States. That's just the reality. And what we advise people to do is to not just live in the clouds, but focus on practically what can you actually do. In the United States, what you can do, I'm in Texas right now, what you can do in rural Texas is very different than what you can do in California or Illinois or in Washington, D.C. That's just the reality. And also, if we all organize and bring people together wherever we are, we're going to find opportunities. They're going to be different opportunities, but we're going to find opportunities. And if we want democracy to reassert itself, that's what we got to do.
Yeah, László.
Sorry, I was going to say that you must be ready to sacrifice a little, and if you do, you will find that it's surprisingly little you have to sacrifice if everyone is ready to.
I've heard from so many people that their time in struggle is the best time of their lives. Coming back to you, Ezra, for a second, I am interested in the kind of cracks in the edifice. And we saw some in the elections of this fall where just extraordinary cross-the-board victories by Democrats and anti-Trump candidates at every level, from the courts right up through Senate seats and governorships. What do you think are the most widening cracks right now, or the things that perhaps are doing the most to turn people against the Trump administration? You've got corruption, you've got sleaziness, sex scandals, you've got bullying, which you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene and others talking about, war crimes possibly, just plain old cruelty. Like, what do you think is going to turn or is turning the tide?
Well, I think about where we were a year ago. Shortly after the election, the conventional wisdom in DC and around the country was Trump won and he won decisively. He was leading a Republican Senate and House and presidency. he was going to get what he wants. And the smart move for Democrats and for everybody else was to get in line. Think about back in 2017, there was this sense of resistance. There was this sense of this isn't normal and we're going to push back. Everybody from the Washington Post to Democratic leadership to other companies to media, there was a sense that there was going to be a fight. That's not what 2025 looked like. The elites all around the country just were falling over themselves to fall in line behind the regime. We saw this from Amazon, we saw this from Facebook, we saw this from Google, we saw this from Apple, we saw this from media institutions like the Washington Post and from CNN. And there was a scary period earlier this year where it looked like Trump was going to succeed in consolidating power in this country. And I think the thing that has worked is mass, peaceful, organized people power starting very early on. In February and March, we were holding massive town halls where Republicans and Democrats alike were coming back home. And these libraries and community centers and public gatherings were just filled to the brim of people saying, why are you going along with, at that time, Elon Musk? Why are you allowing him to run roughshod over the entire country? And Elon Musk got kicked out of the White House. He's no longer working there. That was followed by protests for hands off. That was followed by the first No Kings Day on June 14th. That was followed by Labor Day and by No Kings 2, and then by these incredible election results. What is shifting people? I think it's two things. One, Trump is overreaching. He is doing deeply unpopular things. A smart authoritarian in that position who is really disciplined, I think he might have had a shot to very quickly and decisively consolidate power by doing things that are popular with the general public. But he got a lot of votes from people who were worried about the prices of bread and eggs. He's not doing anything about the price of bread and eggs. So a lot of non-MAGA voters who were willing to give him a shot are now feeling betrayed and disappointed because instead of seeing their lives improve, what they're seeing is the East Wing of the White House be demolished and a long list of corporate sponsors handing out donations to Trump directly. So I think a combination of large-scale people protest that makes clear that this guy isn't inevitable, that this period we're in is temporary and democracy will reassert itself, combined with what everybody can see with their own eyes, that this is one of the most corrupt regimes in American history and that their lives aren't getting better. I think that combined is producing the kinds of cracks in the edifice, as you say, that we're currently seeing. It was the elections a few weeks ago, and it's this current orientation of the regime that's a little assurance feat. That doesn't mean we're going to win. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods. But I do think in the last few weeks we've seen a vibe shift.
Are there cracks in the Hungarian edifice too, László? Does Viktor Orbán have an Achilles heel?
I think there is now, maybe the first time in 15 years. But first, let me react to what you said. I think that's No King is such a wonderful thing. You need to have a title, a slogan, something that tells people what the whole thing is about, but in a playful way, and it sticks. So back to Hungary now, probably the first time in many years, it looks that the opposition has some chance to win Orbán if victory in the election is possible at all. We don't know. Certainly, we won't have a fair election. We haven't had one for many years now. But even with the unfair elections, there's a chance that Orbán will lose. What happens after that, I don't know. But that's partly due to, I think, the people really being dissatisfied with what is happening, and strangely, a little sadly, the cracks appeared a little more than a year and a half ago, related to a child abuse case, and I mean strangely, because there have been so many other similar things over the past years and almost decades, and nothing happened. But now it seems that there is something really going on.
It has echoes of our own situation, I think, as people talk about
so
the
many
Jeffrey
echoes.
Epstein files.
And
the administration trips over something that you couldn't have predicted would be the decisive trip. I guess I'd like to ask the two of you if you have questions for one another, if you have something you want to learn from each other. It sounds like you've both been aware of the work happening in one another's countries. I imagined that was going to be the case. But is there something you wish you had known or wish you had in place that you want to share with the other? Ezra?
Well, one regular strategic question, László, that I'd be curious how have you all tackled this in Hungary? There's tension I see within the anti-regime space between folks who are comfortable building a broad coalition of no, and this is an ideologically diverse coalition of folks from socialists to never Trump Republicans who don't like what the regime is doing and are comfortable in that space, to people who I think very rightfully say, look, saying no isn't enough. Not having an alternative is one of the things that got us to this point. And it's actually important for us to build a movement that can very clearly say, this is what we are for. But by its very nature, that's a smaller movement. And I'm curious if you saw similar dynamics in Hungary, if there were folks who were comfortable saying, look, we're against Orbán and that's it. And we agree on that. And that's where we're going to agree. And how that coalition building worked with folks who are more committed to getting to a place of yes about what comes after Orbán?
Great question.
Right. That's a great question. And if you have like 2 weeks, we could discuss that in length. No, it's a very, very fundamental question. And one of the major problems I see in Hungary, this division between the two groups, and I don't know how we can consolidate between those two. I think that will actually decide the next elections, but again, I think we must do everything to kind of push this a little back and focus on how to get rid of the autocrat. And I think the most important thing is to convince people that there is nothing to be afraid of, as long as we act together. I know it sounds a bit too sentimental and melodramatic, but this is what I really believe. But I can't answer your question really.
Do you have a question for Ezra? Do you, László, have a question for Ezra?
Yeah, not a question. It's a comment. One of the great wonders of your movement is, which I can relate very much to, is that you don't get tired. You go on and on and on, because that's one of the keys. Don't let them lean back. We should come up with something every single day, and this is what I experienced throughout all those months of our movement. That the students came up with something every single day, something that attracted supporters and something that frightened the government propaganda and their representatives. And I have a high hope in that thing with your movement. Like I read the news every single day. Oh, something happened here, something happened there, and it happens all over. I know it's not a question, but I just wanted to share this.
No, so we talk about the challenge of tactical freeze. I learned that phrase from Zineb Tefekci. She had a great book, Twitter and Tear Gas, maybe 10 or so years ago, about the social movements during the era of social media. And one of the challenges is when movements get good at a thing, maybe it's a certain type of protest or a certain type of march, they can just do that thing, but that will pretty quickly stop having an impact. And so figuring out tactical innovation is a core part of how we try to engage in the world. We can't just keep on doing the exact same thing if we want to grow the movement and have more people come out. So I was really excited earlier this year when there was a mass response to the capitulation from Disney and ABC when they fired Jimmy Kimmel, this comedian who was critiquing Trump. They fired him, and 1.7 million people canceled their subscriptions. We had protests outside ABC and Disney headquarters, and immediately they backtracked. They hired him back on. They put him back on the air, and that's not the kind of thing we normally do. We're normally focused on a member of Congress or maybe a senator or a state legislature, but figuring out ways to apply pressure in different places that might attract more people who don't think of themselves as activists, who don't think of themselves as organizers, but don't like the idea that their favorite comedian is going off the air and suddenly this is relevant to their lives. I think that kind of tactical innovation is really, really important to us. It's also not easy. To your point, Laura, earlier, sometimes we try stuff, it just doesn't work. And that's okay. That is okay. We encourage a lot of innovation. We throw a lot of stuff at the walls, and if it doesn't stick, then we go on to the next thing. I think one of the reasons why we're able to do this, though, is like I'm not leading all these. It's not like I've got a long Excel sheet somewhere with all the ideas and we're going down it. We were a distributed movement where there are thousands of local group leaders. And I'll just leave. I've been speaking a while, so I'll just leave with this. One of the something
Yeah, but
beautiful that's been really encouraging to me for the last 10 years. She had just been coming off of, she had taken a few months off and come back to the local Indivisible group. And she said, look, when one of us takes a breath, the choir keeps singing. And I think that is core. We do have to keep on pushing back against the regime, but at an individual level, that can burn you out. And if you're building groups of resistance, if you're building locally led and operated groups of resistance, that means individually you can take a break. This doesn't have to be day in, day out for you every single day, but you can be a part of a community that does continue the work and is innovating and trying all these cool tactics, some of which will work, some of which won't, but some of which, like No Kings, get scaled up. I didn't come up with No Kings. That came out of the movement. We saw No King signs in the streets earlier this year, and we said, that's a great idea. We should go with that. And that then was taken
Yeah.
national.
You
that was
talk
huge.
about
And
why,
also,
distributed leadership and distributed movement. Laszlo, you've benefited from sort of European distributed leadership and movement, and you've had support of lots of celebrities and theater artists who are part, I would say, of your community, right?
absolutely. Support came from all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. The theater and media community, just to name a few: Kate Blanchett, Ian McKellen, Robert Wilson. So loads and loads of people. Everyone would recognize, and they knew what they were talking about. They didn't just give their signature. They knew the situation. They knew us. They knew our education and creation. So that without that support, we couldn't have done anything. But that is open to every one of us if we reach out, if we don't just focus on ourselves but reach out to the others, which again with our movement was very true, that our students reached out to others, helped others in need, etc., etc., and they got back from those communities. And the other thing, if I may, I wanted to add to Ezra's thing. I think it's important not to ask anyone to do something they are not able to do, but contribute the way they can. So if you're a carpenter, you can build the stage for the speakers. If you're a technician, you can do the mic. If you're a producer, you will manage the crowd. So we can all add our, and then you will come up with independent ideas like No Kings, because I'm involved. I want to help. I want to make it even better.
Well, on that note, it was a genius insight, I think, of Indivisible to encourage people to protest where they are instead of requiring that they make the lift to get to a big city capital somewhere far from them. Are there other initiatives you want to share right now, Ezra or Laszlo? And then I'd love you to each answer the question that we always ask our guests at the end of these episodes, which is, what do you think a story will be that the future tells of this moment? Whether we're talking 25, 50 years, what will the future say about us? But Ezra, is there a campaign you want to mention in a gentle kind of way right here, right now?
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the damage is being done by the administration directly or by the legislature, the Republicans who are working in concert with the regime. But actually, a lot of the threat that I see that I'm most worried about are the attacks on other sources of power. So it's not purely legislative. It's not purely coming from the executive branch. They are attacking media. They are attacking businesses. They are attacking universities, just as they were in Hungary and are in Hungary. They're attacking other sources of power in this country. And so I don't think it's enough for us just to vote. I don't think it's enough for us just to organize to push our legislatures. I think we have to exercise our power as consumers, as economic agents. So right now, we're part of an effort that is directly boycotting a handful of companies that are helping the regime. Spotify right now is running ICE recruitment ads. They're running recruitment ads for the secret police. This is a place where people listen to punk music, and in between their punk songs, they're hearing recruitment ads for the secret police force. We shouldn't give them money. We should just not give them money. It's easy to do that. We look at Amazon, you look at Home Depot. These are big national organizations, multinational organizations that are directly cutting deals with the regime. We don't have to give them our money. We can instead be supporting businesses elsewhere. And if we do it in a coordinated fashion, we're not going to win them all over, but we will send a message that for that marginal institution, whether it's a media institution or a business or a university, they can't just make the decision, well, we're being bullied now, so the smart move is for us to capitulate. They have to think, wait, there's going to be reputational damage here. We might actually be negatively impacted if we simply go along with the regime or seek business with their secret police force. We want that as part of their calculus. And so I would encourage folks you can check out indivisible.org or check out your local organizing hub, but find ways to apply this power that's not purely focused just on the legislature, purely focused on elections, but is using your economic power now as well as we lead to what I hope will be historic midterm elections next year.
László, you have something on the horizon?
Well, not really now. I mean, we try and participate in all kinds of local fights and political fights, but in a way we've done our stuff years ago, and we serve as an example. And I know that people and organizations use our example as an example. But what is always important is to convince people that you shouldn't be an accomplice to the powers just out of because it's more comfortable to switch on Spotify or Amazon. You should give up on those things to have resistance.
There was life before Spotify. So what about that future question? What do you think is the story that the future will tell of this moment? László, you're a storyteller. Thank you for one thing, for having your book translated from Hungarian. I can't wait to be able to read it.
Thank you. I can't.
But what do you think is the story or the play that will be made about these times by the people of the future?
I think this one big question future will ask, what do you mean illiberal democracy? I think that's, they will just not understand. I hope they will not understand what this whole thing was about, the absurdity of these times, and I hope they will laugh at us.
Illiberal democracy being the best term people have come up with for describing what's happening in Hungary, a tautology in itself.
Yeah, but that's a contradiction in terms.
Ezra, what about you? What story do you think the future will tell? I think I have a guess, but...
Well, I love the idea of, in the future, them just laughing at the ridiculousness of this. Like, what on earth? Donald Trump, a reality star, came in and implemented a fascist regime. He started nationalizing the guard and invading other states, and the Republicans did nothing. They just backed him up every step of the way. There was no fracture. How did that even happen? And after, with some years of distance and with the danger gone, it will all just be a ridiculous episode because democracy will reassert itself. DC will be a state. Puerto Rico will get self-determination. We'll get money out of politics. We'll make voting day a national holiday. We'll guarantee voting rights, and we'll actually have a democracy that reflects the will of the people. And we'll take it for granted until the next threat is on our doorsteps, and we'll have to organize again.
Beautiful. Great way to end. I thank you both. This conversation could clearly continue. It's been really a pleasure listening to you and listening to you in conversation with each other. It's a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. And László, thanks for being an inspiration to pro-democracy organizers all around the world.
Thank you. It is a great inspiration for us, what you do. So,
Mutual Appreciation Society. I love it. Thank you.
And not out of curiosity. I mean, not out of,
Yeah, not of the Trump Orbán kind.
I really meant.
I think Trump and Orbán might need it.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the full conversation. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters. Please join our members now by making a one-time donation or by making it monthly. All the information is at lauraflanders.org. And thanks again to all of our members, supporters.